Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Or good afternoon, no matter where you are.
Or good evening.
It could be a good evening.
Yes.
Welcome live or welcome for the replay.
We are happy to have you here with us. Welcome to Duzie Live, Observe Your Fear.
Do you want to tell a story about when you were a little girl?
When I was 17, I was in high school. I come from a big family, and I was the first one awake in the morning. I guess it was because I needed more time to get ready. So I would get up in the morning, take my shower, and when I was done, I would walk through the house, the living room, down the steps, and into my brother's room, flip on the light, and wake him up and say, "It's your turn, time to wake up." Well, this one morning, things happened as usual. It was such a routine. I never needed to turn on the lights. So I just walked in the dark through our big living room, maneuvered the furniture, down the steps, turned to the right, and then turned to the left. But instead of the light switch being there that morning, it was my brother Jim's body right here. I went to flip on the light switch, and it was his body. I don't know if he said anything or not. I don't think he did. But as I did that, it startled me so that I gave a big long scream,
and I have a long scream,
and I couldn't stop, and that scream just kept coming, and I was like frozen, and he was shaking me, going, "Suze, it's me. You're okay. And very funny. That story is a story now I can tell, and every time I think of it, I just have a laugh.
Hilarious.
I am easily startled. Believe it or not, I am not afraid of the dark. I'm not afraid of people lurking in weird places. That just has such a laugh effect on me now. But for many people, things like that could have set them up for a big fear that they would observe.
So
I guess I have different fears than that, but not that one.
So some of our fears are small fears, and some are huge fears. Some things are just, oh, well, laugh it off. But there are other ones that grip us to the point where we don't move forward in the flow. We don't live life to the full because we're afraid of what someone else is going to think,
right,
or the way we might respond, or someone who might be around the corner. And so we're going to look today at taking time to observe our fear. This is part of the flow course, looking at, this is, I think, the third module, right? Observe Your Fear.
Yeah, so thank you so much for all of you who have joined us.
I'm going to move this light a little bit because that way you can see Susie's eyes because they're gorgeous.
Oh, okay. We got a reflection going. So again, welcome. For those of you who are live with us, there is a chat right here to the side. On my side, it's right over here. And if you don't mind, just go down to the bottom in the comment section and write your name and where you're coming from, and then we'll know who we're talking to and who's in the room with us, so we can address you and be more specific with you. For those of you who are watching by replay, thank you. I'm sorry that the time wasn't exactly right for you to join us live, but we're very happy for you to continue to join us. You also can make comments, and those comments will come to us, and we will respond to you afterwards. So please feel free at any time just to respond right down there in the chat room. And also down in the chat room, there is a little dot. If you have a question, you can go into that space and it will say question, and that will alert it as a red question, and we'll be able to see
get our attention.
And also, I believe we have Matt Taylor with us. Matt, are you here? Give us a little type. Oh, Megan's on. Thank you, Megan. It took her a while to get on. Megan is coming in from England, I'm guessing. Dale Potter, good morning.
Good morning.
You're here from Flint, Michigan. I think Matt's here, but if anybody is on and you have a question, and we might miss it because we're talking or thinking or having fun over here.
Because we do talk and we do think.
And we have fun. Woo! Then just please put it right up there, and we're going to have some time to share. We want to hear your responses. We want to have this an interactive time.
Now, one of the things we're doing different, we're in the midst of evolving what Duzie Live is going to be. So today we're going to use a little bit more of the video feature, playing a few videos and then talking about it. These videos that we're going to be playing are directly out of the Flow course, dealing with the introduction to fear, dealing with some of those things that we're going to watch all of it, or maybe just part of it, and then come back and talk about it because it's already recorded. And so while the video is playing, we can come on and just chat with you as well.
If you are not on the course, I just put the link in. It's courses.duzie.com. And it will hook you up to one, and then you can get into all the courses. If you put a /collections on the end of it, you'll see all of our courses all at once. So we are so happy to have you here. And we are excited that you guys have joined us, and welcome to Observe Your Fear. As we're presenting or talking, like we said, please make comments. We're going to ask you questions, and just like I had my story of my non-fear fear, of my startle fear, we're going to talk about some of our fears and what fear looks like in your life, and we'd love to have you respond.
Right, because if you watched the Driving Zoe with Dave Taylor, he actually made the comment, which didn't come out a lot in our course, but not all fear is bad. And we totally agree with that. He mentions the fact that if you see a bear, fear is going to cause you to run. If you get near a cliff, fear is going to cause you to back off. Fear probably will save your life many, many times. It's not that kind of fear that we're talking about. We're talking about the fears that grip you to the place where you can't move forward.
You might
can't
get stuck
into the flow. Yeah. So that's the kind of fear we're looking at. But we can also look at the fears that are very healthy in our life.
Yeah. So basically, we want to observe your fear. We want to show you this video now. So just sit back and relax. And this will give us some things to chat about.
Welcome to Flow Module 3, which is Observe Your Fear.
So 2 Timothy 1:7 is our key verse for this whole segment. And it says, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. And we really want to look in this module about how God can take our fear and change it into something really useful.
Now, if you've been watching the other modules, you'll know we've been outside. We've been in nature, surrounded by trees. What fear does is it locks us up. It's like the wall of fear. We get ourselves in these places where we can't see the things that God has made because we're locked up in fear. Fear stops the flow. Fear stops us right in our tracks. It's like, I got this cage. And we're not made to live in the cage.
Nope.
Now the cage has a door. But for many of us, we don't even dare open that. Our fear, in a way, we use it to protect ourselves. We don't risk. We're not brave. We choose to live with our fear. The problem when we do that is the flow stops.
That's right.
Fear will always take you someplace. It will allow you to leap forward as you observe it and say, this is my journey ahead, or it'll take you backwards. It's like a dam on a river. If you allow it to grow, the flow stops. We need to live outside of our cage.
So here's what happens with fear. There's conflict on the outside, and what happens inside is our response. And it's called fight, flight, or freeze response.
Let's say that again.
Fight, flight, or freeze. So what happens is when the conflict happens and something we perceive as like, oh no, that shouldn't come my way, then we have our body that is gearing up inside. Our blood moves faster, our heart beats faster, our breathing is faster, and blood moves out to the extremities of our body. And so when we fight, we can have a response of like, we go at it. Or the flight is we run away, we try to get away. Or freeze, we're just not quite sure what to do. So it's like, we stop, we're frozen. And we can do that physically, but we can also do all of those three responses emotionally as well. We can fight. we can fly or run away, or we can freeze and just get stopped in our flow.
When I think of the word fear, I like acronyms. You'll notice that. Flow, everything acronym. But when I think about it, I saw this not too long ago on the internet. Fear stands for false evidence appearing real.
Yeah.
Let me say that again. Fear, you take F-E-A-R. False evidence appearing real. When that takes place, when we think that's real, we're either going to fight it, we're going to flight, take off, or it's going to cause us to freeze, stop. Because the conflict always comes from the outside. Very rarely does conflict come from the inside. It comes from the outside, but the fear goes inside.
Yep.
That fear is going to make me want to hide. Or it's going to want me to get anxious. What's going on? You can't sleep, you can't eat, you can't... Or you want to fight, it's going to bring out that anger.
Yep.
It's coming from the outside. We have to observe it. That's what this module is about. Don't run away. Step up, take a look at it, and respond to it. We're going to give you some techniques of what to do to respond to the fear that we observe.
Yeah, so as Dan just said, many of the interchangeable words that go together with fear could be anxiety or anger. These are different ways that different people respond to it. And there are a few techniques, basic techniques, when you're facing any kind of fear, anxiety, or anger. And it's called bottom up or top down.
Ooh, explain
The
that.
bottom up techniques can happen as we go from the bottom up and we slow our breathing, because our breathing and our heart rate goes faster. If we take slow, deep breaths, it gives us time. It allows the blood to go from the far parts, extremities, hands, feet, to back to where we need it, in our center portion. That is the bottom up. So our breathing, slowing our breathing and taking control of our breathing. Top-down techniques have to do with retraining our mind. And the beginning of that is mindfulness, being aware of what is happening. Maybe not in the exact moment when it's happening, because not all of us are able to catch it that quick. That's why journaling is so important, because you can journal your responses and understand what's going on when these different situations happen. There's something else called CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's retraining of your brain. So we're going to talk about some of these very practical ways to identify and observe your fear, but also ways for you to combat it and to take steps toward not being so controlled by your fear so that you can have the flow.
God did not give us the spirit of fear, but power, love, and sound mind. This module is all about how to actually look at our fear. What is it? And why is it there? And how do we move forward into the flow?
Thanks so much for joining us for this module, Observe Your Fear.
All right, we are back on. Thank you for the chats that took place during that time. I love what my brother said, Dale. Thanks for being here. It's not just fight, flight, or freeze. They've also added fall. Recently, I saw another word that it's growing, because people are realizing that fear has a huge effect on our life, and it causes us to, fall as well. That's a good one. Thank you for that thought.
Yeah, so as we think about it, I put a question out. I'd love to have all of you answer. How does fear appear in your life? As we were creating the course, we had to understand what are some of the fears. One of mine that I that gets me first is rejection. And that's probably a more extreme fear that I have to observe and put some of these up and down responses in my life to. But what are some of the fears that you have? How does your fear appear in your life? If you don't mind, just put it right there in the comment, and we would love to just have a little mini survey here, and let's chat about these questions that you're posing up here.
Yeah. I mean, for me, when I was going through it, there's one of the videos in the course that talk about the 12 fears that suddenly came to me. I mean, one of them was as simple as I'm afraid of the dark. I always been afraid of the dark. If I'm going outside, I'm going to know for sure there's something out there in the dark because my imagination runs so great. That's not one to worry about so much for me, but it's something I'm aware of. But then there are other fears, fears of not being in the right time, that I'm past my time, things like that. Those are deeper fears, and those are things for me and the flow of my life that I need to work on. So what are some of the things for you?
I see in the chat, that's one fear of yours as well. Thanks, Laura. Welcome from Switzerland. Fear in the Christian church. Megan brought up a great question here. There's so much fear in the Christian life, in that a lot of people aren't willing to explore anything different because they're afraid. I'm not sure what they're afraid of. Let's chat about that.
Yeah.
Would you like to just talk about that for a few minutes?
Well, I think in any organization that has strong boundaries, people are going to be afraid to step over those. I don't think it's anything new. I think if you look at Judaism in Jesus' day, people were afraid to do anything on Sunday. And Jesus, having no fear, stepped over those lines. I think we live in a time where it's okay to disrupt. That's actually a characteristic of the generation, that it's okay because things need to change. I think when we're too afraid to speak out, it means probably we're not connected. People who seem to be well connected oftentimes are given the right to speak into a process. A family that is well connected, there can be some tension, there can be some disagreement because they know they're not going to be rejected. They may be confronted. But I believe oftentimes, especially in Christianity and some other organizations, we're afraid to step across the line. What if I am rejected? Who am I to say something? And I think that's a tension we will live with for a long time. But because the Bible itself is a living word that seems to speak differently to different generations. I believe the Spirit uses it in different ways, but I believe the way Spirit uses it today might be different than 100 years ago because the situations, the world is different. So people of different traditions, even within the same culture of Christianity, are going to see things very different. They're going to value things different. You put on top of that generational worldview, and you've got a lot of different points of view. And I think the key is to lean in and remain connected rather than pull away and find yourself at a place where you have no voice, or you're a voice that is so far out that no one listens anymore. So I think there's this healthy tension that we need to walk in. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, here we have another comment. Thanks, Laura. You said, because some are listening to others' opinion and the prejudice in general. I think that's so true. I agree with what you said, Dan. And another layer is in the Christianity, in the church, we have such limited boundaries. We're trying to live by the word of God. And then we have our church gatherings, and they influence how we think and feel about it. And yes, I would agree. We have prejudices that stop us from being more open-minded, for being more inclusive.
Yeah.
One of the things I loved at our church recently in our core leaders meetings that we're having since the beginning of January on Wednesday nights, one of the nights we talked about inclusivity. And actually, Megan, you were here for that. It was such a refreshing time for these leaders of the culture of the church to ask the hard questions and say, how can we include all people? How can we be really careful even with what we say or don't say as we're greeting people, so that everybody will feel welcome, so everyone would feel included?
Yeah.
And I think, like you say, Laura, if we listen to others' opinions, and we have our own prejudices without being open and without being the loving people, loving God and loving others and loving ourselves and being fully alive, I think that does make such a difference.
There's a comment here about, I don't understand totally about whisper and can her voice be up?
I think when the video is going on, they could hear us whispering. Yeah.
Okay. Super.
Yeah. Thanks for that comment. Here's another one. Megan says, I like how your church is exploring leadership and they open that up to the rest of the congregation. That's so unusual. A lot of churches are afraid to do that. We agree. We're just very blessed to see that happening.
In talking to our pastor, one of the things I hear loud and clear is that there are a lot of churches that spend their time protecting the foundation of the church. And so their first question that comes to their mind is, how are we different? How are we different? And we sort of combat our differences. We sort of, that's the main focus, is how we're different. And if you watch the news, if you watch things, everything is focused on how we're different. Where I think the church today that's really going to survive is the ones who lean in and say, where are we the same? Where is the human heart between us? Where do we actually agree on this issue? So I see a huge shift taking place in some churches, but it will probably be the shift that the churches that actually are able to remain and thrive, and ones who don't will be those ones who are able to walk into their society and find, where are we the same, and start there. I think that's what Jesus did. Yeah. Jesus did not come in and start with, where are we different? He started off with their story. You're a farmer, let's talk about seeds. Come follow me, we'll fish for men because you're fishermen. He started where they were the same. And I think that's the difference. Those churches, those organizations that are always going to be focused on, here's where we're different, here's where you're wrong, here's where I'm right, they won't survive no matter what side of the political aisle, what side of the denominational aisle. We've got to be focusing on connecting, not disconnecting.
Yeah, we got a few more comments. Another comment is not being reverent and fear of being stuck. I also have that fear. I do not want to be stuck.
No, she doesn't.
A fear of being lost. These are a little bit more physical ones. Fear of being lost. Yeah. Dan and I, when we were dating, we were just reminded of this story because we have some friends who are dating very long distance and they have to meet together. When we were dating, we each drove 8 hours to meet each other in St. Louis. And we said, let's just meet under the arch. Now, this was back in the day before cell phones and before GPS. And how did we actually get there? And were we not afraid, like, now we can just text, I'm over here, hello, hello, hello. And then we find each other so much easier. But back in the day, we didn't have that. So I'm glad we weren't afraid of being lost. We were only lost in love. Yeah,
but I think it's interesting to see, in the day where we didn't have the cell phone, we would venture out and go places. And if we get lost, we get lost. Yesterday, I was in Atlanta in traffic that was horrendous. And it was like every few moments I'm looking at the GPS. And I think sometimes the things that we put around us for convenience lead us into some places of fear because we depend upon those things. So sometimes we create our own fear spaces as well.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got a few more comments. Physical, emotional, and spiritual fears. Yes. Those fears can be in every area of our life. And boundaries
can come up in those areas.
Yep. That's right. Another comment. I've just moved to a different browser and I've seemed to lost everyone's comments. Oh, okay. Sorry about that, Megan. They're still coming in. Status quo. Here's another comment. Status quo is often comfortable. Change is also often viewed as uncomfortable. Thus, we often fear changes or different views.
Yeah. Is that coming in from you?
No, they're on my computer.
Oh, okay. I was like, I didn't see you type that.
Don and Cheryl are on my computer.
Okay.
And here's another question. Another comment. I agree. Community leadership versus hierarchy or top-down leadership. Yeah, things I hope to do or our wishes and dreams. Yeah, those can be fears as well. Another comment there. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think the whole idea of community is, especially in the Christian tradition, we say we follow Jesus, but most of our leadership style has nothing to do with Jesus' leadership style. he went along and he found 12 nobodies, basically. And he didn't find 12 nobodies who all agreed with each other. He basically found 12 nobodies who were very, very different from each other. And he took them on a journey. He didn't give them necessary position. He just walked with them because his whole idea was, I'm going to pour myself into these 12 and they perhaps will change the world. Now, one walked away totally. Many of them lost their life. But today, I think some of the structure, and I think this is why we fear, is if you're in the 12, you're in. You're in. You sign the dotted line. You're part of the party. You just go through all those things. And if you're in, and then suddenly you have new revelation, or you've thought differently, or you change your mind on something, you better know for sure that very soon you're going to be out, because oftentimes we don't take too kindly to those who once believed one way and then change. Where I see that Jesus led a group of people who were still free to talk. Some of the things that were said, and even the times when Jesus was a little bit strong, there was this Jewish combative, let's talk about this, let's go deeper with this, rather than you're out. Jesus didn't kick anybody out. And I think today a lot of fears come with, if I truly say what I think, I might not belong anymore, which I think is really sad.
When we're thinking about fears, the top 10 fears, or the most common phobias, include these: social phobias, open spaces, heights, flying, enclosed spaces, insects, snakes, that's mine,
That definitely
dogs,
hurts.
storms, and needles. And those, to me, seemed like very physical fears, like we were talking about. And then I found another list of 12 most common fears holding you back from success. And as I looked at them, I identified them more as emotional fears, or internal fears, not fears of things on the outside, but internal fear, like fear of failure, fear of success, fear of being judged, fear of emotional pain. I'm afraid of emotional pain. I am very, I'm not good with pain, physical or emotionally. So I understand that one. Fear of embarrassment. Some people would rather not be embarrassed, and so they wouldn't go or do or be in certain places because of that. Fear of being abandoned, or fear of being alone. These are very real spaces. Fear of rejection, fear of expressing your true feelings, intimacy, fear of the unknown, fear of loss, fear of death. And then there are only 5 fears. Here's one more study that I found that I thought was interesting. There's 5 basic fears. Most of the other ones come out of these. So these are fears of extinction, mutilation, or some kind of damage to a part of your body structure, loss of autonomy. This is fear of not being able to be and go and have your own
Be yourself.
personal self expressed. Fear of separation, and that can come in a lot of forms, and fear of ego or death.
So Megan Morris has just joined us in the room.
Oh, okay. We've got a video from Megan. Cool.
Not a video. She's going to come on live here. Let me get this, make sure. I'm going to grant you status. This will be good. So I think, Megan, you just have to turn on your speaker, and there she is.
There she is. Can I hear you? Let's see.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Megan, welcome this morning.
Thank you very much.
And everybody-
How are you today?
We're doing great.
Thanks for popping on, Megan. Are you in England?
Yes, I'm at work
Oh, okay.
nice.
Great.
on my lunch break.
Okay,
Nice,
awesome.
nice.
Thank you so much for making space to join us. Speak to us. What's up?
So I was thinking about that list you were going through of like the emotional fears.
Yes.
And I think so much of that also speaks into when we're talking about the church and our Christian faith, that that loss of community, that loss of acceptance, that loss of understanding of people. And I think, I mean, I really admire what your church is doing in discussing leadership and all these kinds of things. And I think it's very interesting because I think the church is afraid of discussing these things or talking about these things or stuff like that. But I think even we sometimes as Christians, like, that's what I love about you guys is I can say outrageous things to you and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. And you kind of like, okay, right. But we still have a conversation about it. And that's what I find frustrating sometimes about in our faith is that sometimes we can't even have those conversations one-on-one with each other because people are afraid. And I'm like, what are you afraid of? That I might think differently to you? Why is that scary? Because some of the best conversations I have with my home group and with my house church is like when we kind of challenge each other and somebody will throw something out and go, and we're like, gosh, yeah, I really don't know about that. Or that's really interesting. I think we've kind of lost the mystery of God because we feel like we have to have all the answers.
Yeah.
And then when we talk about fear, there's also we talk about the fear of God. And what do we mean by that? Because in English, that's a similar word. And
good point.
And it's like, I think when I think of those kinds of things, like awe and fear, I can't think of God like that. So I think of when C.S. Lewis wrote about Aslan, because that's in some ways really hard. That he's like, it's not a tame lion. Yes, no, but he is good.
Good. Yeah, I love that.
So it's that kind of I think idea. And I also think what you were saying, and so this is something I'm just going to throw out there. I'm not saying whether I think this or not, but you were saying the Bible is the living word of God. I disagree with that. I think Jesus is the living word of God. I think the Bible is like a bunch of stories showing us how God reacts in situations, showing us how his relationship with humanity, with creation, has changed. So how he started where they were like, we need a king. And so he's like, well, this is how a king and how you relate to a king in that kind of worship and bringing offerings. And then it's moved on. So when Jesus comes, it's this is my son. So it's a very different relationship. Yeah. Just throwing out that. Now that might make some people really afraid, going, oh my gosh, has she completely lost it? Is she still a Christian? oh my gosh, crazy. But I'm like, those kinds of ideas, I'm like, what do I think of that? I don't know. But it's a challenge and it makes me wrestle and it makes me kind of it kind of makes me want to know God more because I'm like I don't know the answer to that. And so it's a search and it's a journey. Otherwise the journey, like if you're going to another book, Pilgrim's Progress, otherwise the journey's really boring. Yeah. I kind of want a bit of adventure. I kind of want some things that, I mean, I'd like a bear from a distance. Thank you very much. Don't want it close by, but it's kind of, interesting if you see, I've never actually seen a bear apart from in a zoo, but you know what I mean? If you see how they interact as a family unit, you see how they hunt, and you can kind of go, wow, God created that bear just as much as he created me. Yeah. What can I learn from that? Yeah.
First of all, Megan, I want to thank you for asking hard questions.
Oh, yes.
Love that. You're thinking way outside the box, and we love those challenges of things we maybe have or haven't thought about. So thank you for bringing on the hard stuff.
You brought out at least 4 things. The first one I wanted to address was the reason I can sit and listen to whatever you say is because I love you more than I love your belief.
Yep, that's right.
And I think that's one of the problems today is that many times, especially I find this in the Christian culture, is we literally love our position
Yeah.
or our belief more than a person.
We're protecting ourselves or our group of people, right?
Yeah. So whenever we get to that place, we've already taken the wrong step. We've already stepped away from Jesus because we have to love the person first.
Yeah.
And if I come at what you've just said about the word of God, if I take that as, oh, she is coming against something I believe, then that's going to shut there. There's going to be a curtain that's drawn, and I'm not going to listen, because everything is that we believe is in compartments. So just hearing one thing you say could say, well, then we think differently. I'm not going to listen to what she says. But if I listen further, I go, yeah, I agree. Because we're willing to go past a terminology into some areas that's like, yeah, that's very true.
And try to understand you. And I think that's the beauty of active listening and powerful questions. This Saturday coming up in Michigan, we're having a workshop on generational coaching. And in preparation for it, it's so important, exactly what you just said, Dan, that we understand the people that we're talking to, that we invest in listening and hearing and asking questions to draw out more and to understand your heart. And like you said earlier as well, try to find those places where we agree. Yeah. We're not trying to say, and like separate and have that fear of presenting a new idea or a real thought or a challenging thought.
Because I think it's interesting that when you actually see, I don't often call myself a Christian anymore, not because I'm against it. It's simply, it's become the term for everything. It's a political party. It's a church. It's a lot of stuff. But at the very core of someone saying they're a Christian is the basis, I follow Jesus.
So what do you call yourself?
And so just wait. So if we follow Jesus, then the Bible is definitely part of it. It keeps us on track. But people for centuries literally followed Christianity before the Bible was in print, before it was even available to anyone. We had the Old Testament, but there were bits and pieces. People weren't reading, and yet they still followed this Jesus. So at the core, we always have to come back to what you just said, that in John, where it talks about he is the word, that if we disagree in everything else, we've got to come to that, because there are still people in the world today that are following Jesus, and the Bible's not in their language.
Yeah.
And so, you've made me think. Ding, ding, 2 points for you. Good job today, Megan.
Woohoo! So what do you call yourself? Let's just go back to that.
I'm a Jesus follower.
Yeah.
That in the core, there's not a place in the world I've gone that sets me off on the wrong foot with somebody. Because there is this, even if someone does not believe that Jesus was a son of God, he has the same standing with many people as Gandhi, as Buddha, as these kinds of things. So if I can identify myself as a Jesus follower, then we can go into what did he actually believe? How am I actually following that? And I find that a much better place than you throw out the other trappings and they see the history, they see the Crusades, they see all this stuff. Yep. That had nothing to do with Jesus. So I would refer to myself. I'm not against Christianity at all, but C.S. Lewis again said, when a word means everything, it means nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's where I would definitely walk very, very easily to say I'm a Jesus follower. Yeah.
And back in the days when we lived in Poland, we couldn't call ourselves missionaries. We just described what we did and what we believed, and sometimes that's more clarifying. Got a comment here that I just want to read, and it might be inclusive to you, Megan. Let me just see. In many ways, I believe in many ways she is right. Jesus is the living word, the good news, not the text. If we want to truly see the living word that is found within creation, that is where we can find life. Yes, so true. Yeah. Seeing scripture as living could easily justify many evils. Too true too true. I do not identify myself as a Christian. I am a follower of Jesus, the good news. So there's another person. And I think it's so important to clarify. Last night I was reading a verse from the Passion Translation. And I really appreciate that because it puts the Bible, the Word of God, the living Word of God, in a language that I can connect with so much more easily. I grew up with, first of all, the King James Bible, and then I couldn't understand that so much anymore, although some of my very early verses I have memorized. And when I say them now, I'm like, what does that even mean? And then you go to the NIV, and I have, my Bible that's all underlined as NIV. But then I really appreciate sometimes the Message, the Passion Translation, because once again, it clarifies that living Word of God touches my heart in a powerful way, in a language that I can connect with, and I really appreciate that. So thanks for that.
Welcome to Matt Taylor. Sorry you're late. You're missing a great discussion.
Oh yeah,
I'm glad you're here to catch up.
Yeah. So Matt, we're just talking about our fears and how does fear appear in our life. And Megan brought up a really great conversation with us about why do Christians have so many fears. So we've been chatting about being inclusive and open and not having our barriers too tight together. Yeah. How was that for a synopsis?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Thanks, Megan, for coming on. Anything else? All right.
No.
Enjoy work.
Thank you so much for joining us. Join us every time for Duzie Live. We love having you on.
Thanks.
Love you. Have a great day.
Oh, that was great. I love when people come on. If you want to come on, all you have to do is push the little hand.
There's a hand that says speak.
And I think you have to have Chrome to get on to do it, but we'll try to get you on.
And I think you have to have headphones and Chrome, and you have to go through 3 screens.
You can't have a telephone. You can't have
a telephone. I think it doesn't work on a telephone. But if anybody has something and you want to come on and have a chat, that would be great. Yes, Matt, you did jump on in a good discussion.
Yeah. So again, we were just asking a little bit of what are other fears maybe that we face. I think the whole idea of the Christian culture and some of the fears there would be rejection, that we're not being heard, that I have a little different view. Am I going to be tossed out? So those are some real fears. But in any area of our life, are there other fears that we want to really dive into a little bit?
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions or comments or emotional outbursts about the fear? Dale, if you're still on, I'd love you to speak to some of the responses to fear. The one that I found that was something that I could catch that was just on the video a little bit ago was bottom up, where you breathe and you slow your body down, and the top down, where you process mentally and you're mindful of these fears, and maybe cognitive behavioral therapy. Dale works in that field, so I would love for you to have some comments. What are some of the other ways to respond to fear in a healthy way? One of the models that I found is called the exposure method to grow. And it talks about going from places where you're comfortable, where you just don't allow that fear. You've repressed the fear. You make yourself so safe that you stay in comfort. And then the idea is that you slowly expose by taking steps as you observe your fear, and you challenge it and you learn and you allow yourself to heal, and you allow those brain waves to find new neural pathways and roads. It's not easy, but your brain will take the easiest routes that you have practiced. And I think this is why the behavioral therapy is so important. Journaling, making goals, doing the hard things. One of my fears that I'm tackling right now is that I'm going to be out of shape. As I get older, I'm going to get more and more out of shape. And I thought, I don't have to have that fear. I can do something about it. So I have this program that I'm doing right now, and it's 30 days, and it's a whole body workout that uses your body weight. And I'm on day 4 today, and I've been consistently doing it. And those are my little steps that are rerouting my brain. When I get up, I'm like, do I want to exercise really? No, I want to stay in comfort. And do I want to go out and lift massive amounts of weight and be into panic? We're like, my body is shocked and I'm sore. But if I take small steps And I'm consistent in that. In the same way, when we're observing our fears and we're finding things that help us, if we take these small steps to grow, we can grow like this plant, nice and full. And we expose ourselves in a safe way, in a slow way, taking along people with us or trying the new hard things and seeing the truth in the moment, that actually it's not a fear that can overcome us. It's really a fear that is a fear that I can learn and heal and reroute my brain pathways so that I have new roads for my brain to travel on, and the truth can help me out.
Yeah, Megan, I love this comment you've had about one fear about going in for an operation. You went for an operation once, you ended up in intensive care. You're going to go to an operation again. There is a fear there, and that's a very healthy fear.
That is a very real fear.
I think we have been created with this ability that if you touch something hot, you're probably not going to go back and touch it. And yet in the world we live, there are sometimes you have to touch it again. You have to trust. And so there has to be a way that you feel somehow able to lower the fear and grow the trust. Now, that may be through reading or research, maybe, of all, 100 people who've done this surgery, only one person has gone into intensive care. And so you go, okay, that's a high percentage that's not going to happen to me. Unless you look at it as, oh, what if I'm the one? Sometimes the research doesn't help. But I think one of the best tools to combat that in my life, and I can't speak for everyone, are people.
Yeah.
People who will
our community net.
Yeah, people who will join us in the journey and say, I am with you no matter what goes through, I am there. And that, to me, the sense that you belong, the sense that someone's got your back, alleviates a lot of fear. When you don't have that, I think it grows the fear, because we feel like an island. We feel all alone.
We're isolated.
So I don't know if there is a one answer of step one, do this, step two, do that, step three, take the doctor out for coffee first. I don't think there's a step, but I think in the basis, in the basic thing is we have to somehow grow the trust more.
Yeah.
And maybe that is through research. Maybe that is, okay, that happened once, but that's not going to happen. I don't know how that happens, because it is a reprogram of the brain that you have to go from this happened, this will happen again, to that won't happen again. Your brain has to allow you to take those steps. Otherwise, you go into the operation with great fear, which actually can complicate things.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Matt has a question. I had a question about the exposure growth model. That's one I was just talking about. As the little steps go up, it looks like it's going from the comfort space towards the panic space. I'm guessing that's definitely not the point. So where do we want to end up? Also, if I'm in the panic space already, does exposure help? Thank you for that question. And Dale, maybe you can help us out and respond to that a little bit. For what I understood, and the picture I like, is that those steps take us to a place over here, where if we're in comfort and we go straight to the top and we go to the panic, we expose ourselves too fast. Like, for example, Dan tried to do this for me. I am deathly afraid of snakes. That is really, somebody asked me recently, where did that come from? And I think it came from when I was a girl out back in our field. We were playing a game and we were huddled in a circle all together, forming like who is going to be it next. And here was a snake that came up and put its head towards me, and it startled me in the bad way. And I have had a very healthy, me and Eve. If only Eve would have had the same
Eve would
fear
have had the
as
same
me,
fear that Suzie, we would have never
as a
left the
human
garden.
race, we would have been great.
Do you want to map out what?
Yeah. So Dan, oh, I think it's okay. Yeah, sure. So Dan one time thought, oh, Suzie needs to get over her fear. So we were down in Florida at this park, and somebody had a big snake, and he was like, Suzie, you have to get over the fear. You have to put this snake around your neck. And I was like, oh, I trust Dan. He's in my community. He knows me. He loves me. He knows what's right for me. But honestly, that was such a panic exposure moment.
Oh, it wasn't a
He put it around. I was like frozen, speak of frozen. I was like, ah! And the snake was slithering around me. And I was just like,
I was singing, let it go.
I was
let
like
it go.
trying not to scream because I didn't want to startle the snake. And it was just so terrible. And then I was like, get it off. And then afterwards, I was like trying to beat him. Like, why did you make me do that? That was panic versus.
And did it do anything to harm you?
Oh, yeah. Look at the stories. So when we think of
I'll
the
be the whiteboard
exposure,
holder.
so here we are down in comfort mode. Okay, here's my like, relaxation, right? And here's what the growth space. That's a little plant, just in case you're wondering. And up here is panic. And sometimes we go from this straight up in the exposure, like I just described with the snake. But instead of going straight up, I feel like, Matt, those steps should take us to a new space. And it's over here. And it's a safe space where there's a really nice, beautiful tree that's growing. And we take steps. But I think it's very important that even identifying, and this was the thing that I think I said in the video, even identifying what your fear is, you've taken a step. And then when we involve people with us, and this is where friends, really close friends, we talked about before, who's in your circle, those people who are your people, they know you, they love you, they care about you. You invite them in this space. You have hard conversations with them. You're honest with them. And together they can help you take steps. Sometimes we need to have a therapist come in, a counselor, a coach, somebody who's an expert in that field. And we might need to have a series of meetings that take us maybe over here and up, and then help us get up to that place where maybe we'll never be completely over the fear, but maybe we'll be in a space where we can actually live and breathe. Our blood pressure is not going to be too high. We don't have to like retreat and protect ourselves, for example, in a corner.
Yeah, and this, Megan, for you with the surgery.
Sorry, my sketch is like pretty wild.
This person for you, Megan, and it may be someone at work that they hear you're going to have a surgery and they go, oh, my mom had that surgery. And, oh, it just was so good for her. And, oh, she went through without any problems. And she is doing so, and suddenly then that person telling the story brings the trust up. So you move in this direction rather than up towards the panic.
So understanding ourselves and trust in ourselves and having a community of supporting people can make such a difference in learning, in healing, and to grow. Yeah, thank you, Matt, for that question. And Dale
just
says,
let you know, if you haven't seen that model, it's in the flow
it's
course.
on a video. It's called
yeah.
Exposure Growth
And I think
Model,
there's a PDF that goes with it as well.
Yeah, there's a PDF for that. Here's another comment from Dale. Thank you. He says, I try to help people be aware 3 steps ahead. Ooh, I love that. He's a therapist. So this is the therapist's point of view. If you can walk in that kind of awareness, then you can change the path before those fears and anxieties overtake us. Wow, that's
good.
Such wisdom right there. Thank you. Mindfulness and awareness can be muscles that we use and practice them. The better able we are to change the course. Yeah. It is a cognitive process and can strengthen your emotional, physical, and spiritual responses. That is
nice.
Gold.
Yeah.
That is gold, Dale.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I think too
for
often
sharing.
we try to just run away from the fear, but we don't realize that we need to build those muscles.
Yeah.
And Suzie snapping
I'm
a
going to
picture of
snap
that right
That's
there.
valuable.
That's good
yes,
stuff.
thank
We'll
you.
put that into practice. Thank you. I
Yeah,
love
so
these comments.
having people who keep you a little bit of aware. Dan is he's of course my
Husband?
favorite person in the world.
Husband,
and my
friend?
soulmate friend.
Yes.
Yes, all of
I was
these
hoping
things.
she'd recognize me this morning.
All of these things and more. And he's strategic. So when you're talking about steps and getting there earlier, He is strategic. So he's way out there in the future. And oftentimes he will be helping me in steps before I get there. So
But oftentimes I have to ask, do you want the strategic Dan or do you want the, yes, I see Dan? Because
Just
they're
listen.
two different Dans.
Just
Two
listen.
different Dans.
Here's another comment. Matt says, that's a great point, Dan. When we face something alone, our thoughts can just cycle around and around, making the fear seem worse. But others can help to change our perspective. And as David was saying in the Zoe interview, they can help ask us, is this fear true?
Right.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
so important.
really good. Oh, here's another really big, beautiful,
We got
long
a
one.
book here. Oh, it's good. Everyone can read it there.
Oh, good. Okay, so he put it in there. I try to help people be aware 3 steps ahead, Dale says. If you can walk in that kind of awareness, you can change the path before those fears and anxieties overtake us. Mindfulness and awareness can be muscles that the more we use and practice them, the better able we are to change the course. It's a cognitive process and can strengthen your emotional and spiritual responses. Megan Morris, that's so true. Dan, Matt, Taylor, question I had about the exposure growth
I
model.
think this is... Okay, go ahead.
As the little steps go up, it looks like it's going from comfort towards
No,
panic.
this is a list of all the stuff that have been said.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Jumped in somehow.
That's why it's so
It's
long.
like, that all sounds very familiar.
It is. Okay, great. All right. Thank you. Oh, he had to copy so everybody could see it. Oh, thank you, Dan. Great.
Susie's reading is like, wow, that sounds familiar.
I was like,
That is
yeah, it's
familiar.
very reinforced.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. So we also have one tool. Do you want to hit on the tool quick? The yes/no tool. This is
right.
one that's also in the course, but as we think about it, maybe we can apply it to an example. Shall we try it? An example, or we'll just go
let
straight
me just
up with
let
it?
me just go right. I won't watch the video. I'm just going to start the presentation and put it up here if we can.
Okay.
And then we'll work through it. And if someone would like to just throw out one fear, we're going to see if this thing works, because I took a few different tools and put them together. I'm a very simple person. I hope this is going to come up.
Okay. It doesn't
Doesn't
seem to be coming. All right.
Maybe we'll watch the video instead. Here is the yes/no fear tool.
So we were thinking about fear, and Dan wanted to create a tool, a simple tool to help us. Tell us about
Well,
it.
there's lots of tools online dealing with fear, and I sort of took a little bit of here and here and here and here, and I put them together in something I called the No Yes Fear tool.
So let's watch it now.
All right, we are back.
All right.
So those were a few of the things that I pulled together, and I was working on some of my fears, and I found this to be really helpful. That if it was, let's say, my fear,
You took a little snap.
I took a snap of it in the way. And there's a download there. I can download it for you if you haven't got it. But simply to go through, for me, this is what's working, is I will look at my fear and I'll ask the question, do I really have this fear? Because sometimes I think we have a fear, but it really isn't there. If I say yes, then I have to go on to, can I do something about the fear? I think there are some fears that we can make choices, or we can get ourselves out of a situation, or I can turn on the lights, and it all changes.
Yeah.
If you're in a place where there's nothing I can do about it, then we need to go talk to somebody. And I think it's always important to talk to somebody. But if I can't do something, then I go to, am I able to? So I can, but am I able to?
Mhm.
And the last one, am I willing to? And so I even worked through this week one of my fears following that path, and I came to a really, really good place, because it was something
Which
that
fear was
literally
this?
I could choose all the way down. The fear of I have a magic coach, and I have to go back to the very basics. And sometimes I think, well, maybe I'm too old to learn some of those tricks. And I had to face that. I had to go through, is there something I can do? Yeah, I can practice. I can go down through the steps, and I'm finding some success there.
Okay, great. So another comment that was made by Matt, and I really appreciate it. One of my thoughts when going through this module was, I'm afraid to look at my fears. And what a real statement right there, because Dan, he quickly identified his 10 or 12 fears.
I started with 15 and I brought it back to 12.
I was like, I would be afraid to find that many fears and have them all open at the same time in my life. So I think that's a real fear, and another plug for our net community.
Not only did I find them, I made a video about them.
Yeah, and a paper
Vulnerable.
document.
Vulnerability there,
Super vulnerable.
which was one of my fears.
So you're like, he's not doing the small exposure growth. He's going the almost panic exposure method. Go, Dan Potter.
I took the elevator.
High five.
I took the elevator, not the stairs.
Wow. All right. So I think that's a fair thing, though, about being afraid to look at your fears, because it's true, when you open up those painful or those areas, like, we were talking about the cage and we open the door. If you open up an area and it's a painful one and you're there alone or you don't know what to do, this is a call out for getting your people, your friends around you. If you need to get a counselor, I have a friend who recently went through a series of meetings with a counselor and the therapist. It was helpful, but it was hard work. And I think that's a very important thing, to take people with you along the journey, and definitely invite God into that space. And one of the downloads, I didn't get this loaded up here properly, so I could download it to you, is a whole list of do not fear verses. So I think I have 4 pages of do not fear, and just encouragement for us that God is with us and he wants you to be in that safe place, and he'll be with you and he'll take care of you.
Let me just put up the
I am sharing.
You're sharing it. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're sharing the
We're
no
sharing
yes
the No Yes Fear
Fear tool.
tool, the
All right.
PDF, for those of you who aren't in the midst of the course yet or aren't caught up about that. A Mentimeter is an outline tool that you can set up and give everyone a code, and you can have them answer a question that creates a word cloud. I'll have to look that up. Is that about you yourself and you invite others into the space? I'm curious about that.
Mentimeter.
Mentimeter. Great.
I heard a guy one time say, well, I was meant to meter, but I think that's a different thing. Totally, wasn't it? Yes, it was totally.
Here's another comment. I think you need to make sure that you are in a vulnerable place and you are safe and have good people around you,
Yeah.
just as Suzie is saying. Yeah, I found that to be so valuable. And sometimes, like Matt was saying, it's hard to face our fears. And when you open it up, many times I don't know how they're going to respond to me. And especially when you have safe people that will take you in and will take you exactly as you are and take the journey with you. That's such a blessing.
And one of the really cool things is age. And this is where age is really good. You know, when you're younger, people will say things like, well, tattoos. They'll say, well, will you want that when you're older? Or they'll say stuff in church like, well, you don't need to say those things until you're a little bit older. Well, when you're old, it's okay. You just, you don't worry about it because you're already there. You're old and it doesn't matter because, the tattoo, and I'm old. It's okay. And I think sometimes
old is overrated and very relative.
I think young is overrated as well. But we're talking about fear. And I think sometimes we lie to ourselves and say, well, this is something I can deal with now. And I think most of the things I would say that I've waited to deal with later in my life, I stop and go, why didn't I deal with that 10 years ago? The quality of life, the flow of my life would have been so much greater if I just got past some of those fears. And I think all of us live with fears, and they may have been fears that were placed on us by the family we grew up in, or the community we grew up in, or the church we grew up in, or an experience we had. And literally, the sooner we start recognizing, if it's a bear, okay, we run away. But if it's just a stuffed bear, we get close enough to appreciate it. And I think that's one of my hearts as we're looking at flow, is that people will observe their fear and really step close enough to go, is that something I can deal with now? Because if we deal with those things, I may have another 12 that I'm not aware of. But if I work on these 12, it's going to move me forward to see what's next and be more open and vulnerable, willing to step into situations that right now I might not, because of the fear that I don't even know I have.
So as we observe our fear, one of the questions, I just popped that into the chat, where did that fear come from? That's a really good starting question. If you can take it back and identify when you first had that fear, or where did it come from? Like for me, it comes from like deep in my heart and then it explodes through my body. But it might be a physical, where did it come from? But it also might be what made you be afraid of that? What were the circumstances? And to be able to, in the exposure process, work through that. And I just want to encourage you with our verse that is actually our verse of this whole module, 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and sound mind. And I think those things come, that power and being loved and loving and having clear thinking. That's so good. And I also love Isaiah 43:1. Dan closed with it in the module. It says, don't fear. This is God speaking to us. I have redeemed you. I have bought you and I freed you. That's what it means. So the cage is open. The door is open. We don't have to be inside the cage, even if the cage door is stuck. Even if the door is hard to open, we can open it and we can be bought and free. And the other thing that God says, you are mine. So that is one of the safe places we can be with God, whether we have those safe people around us yet or not. God is there and we are his.
I think also the thing we have to look at is, if we're in a situation where we're having fear, but we're still plugged into the fear monger, the fear, where the fear is coming from, we have to disconnect. I remember a few years ago, I had a lot of fear about the future because I was watching the news a lot. And there's nothing wrong with the news unless the news is there to cause you to fear. And I think today we live in a world where so much the discussions online, so much of the news that's going on is to get you to fear something so that you will trust a certain person or a certain party. And I've had to unplug that. My news now only comes from what I'm reading, and I try to read only documents that'll show me both sides and actually let me think, and instead of telling me that I don't know enough and I need to be told what to think. And so for me, I really pulled back because I saw every time I turned on the television and watched the news, I was afraid of something else. And that's not where I believe God has me. I want to stay informed. I try to read. I try to stay informed on what's going on. But I also reserve the right that since it's my brain, I will tell myself what I believe. And I won't let someone else dictate that or convince me to follow a certain line. And so that was one thing for me. And there was a comment about, you eat an elephant one bite at a time, which is very true. I identified my 12 big fears, and I'm just working on one right now. And so that's a very true thing.
Challenge.
But it's interesting. The more I work on it, I find that perhaps like an elephant, everything's connected. And when you take a bite of one, you realize you've also taken a bite of something else.
Get more
and
freedom.
Things start falling quicker than I thought. But it also exposes me more than I thought.
Yeah. I just read a story, speaking of elephants. The circus back in the day used to peg elephants when they were little and have them pegged on just this little line. And they got big, and they would have the strength and the muscle and the power of an elephant, of a full-grown adult elephant. But mentally, they were still pegged to that spot. And so when we're thinking of elephants and eating elephants, mentally, we do not have to be stuck to that little line that will limit us. We actually have the power through all these things we're talking about and more to be able to observe those fears and take steps.
So the moral of the story is lift your leg. It actually may be able to come loose.
Okay, here's another comment. I think as you get older, you relax a lot more. And what were once fears aren't anymore. When I was in my 20s, I would fear not achieving stuff more before I was 30. Literally on my 30th birthday, I physically relaxed and was like, why am I letting that fear bother me? Yeah, thanks.
Birthdays are really important.
Thank
fear
you,
marks.
Megan, for sharing that.
You either relax or you go into hyper fear. And so really be careful when you come, especially when you get a 0 at the end. Usually for that is a point of relax or, oh no, I didn't do what I wanted to do. So be careful what you say to yourself.
Dale says fear is often irrational. Therefore, we may not understand where it came from or if it comes from any experiences. There are specific fears and generalized fear. And then Laura was saying, can you be more specific, please? What kind of generalized and specific fears are there? Do you have any examples? Great question.
Good.
I wonder, Dale, if you have the possibility to expound on that. That's very good.
I mean, for me, Matt's got something there, but for me, I would say a specific one is I am afraid of the dark. Very specific. For me, a generalized one, when I go into new spaces, I have this fear of people. Now, do I really have a fear of people? It's a generalized thought that it all changes as soon as I see someone that I know or someone that's doing something I want to observe. So it's that for me would be generalized and specific, but maybe Dale has more on that. What does Matt have to say?
Matt says that's true, Dan. So much of the news and messages we're exposed to are focused on things to make us afraid. There's usually not good news. Most of the news is bad news. Somebody put out recently and a long time ago. There's a fascination with fear. It's pretty much a business. And as you did, the best thing we can do is to disconnect, at least get some distance from the fear hype.
I remember,
thank you for
I
that.
remember when Trump was running for president, and this is not going to become a Trump talk at all, don't worry. But I remember my European friends, they wanted to peg me. What do I think about Trump? And I would always say, well, I don't know him. And they'd say, well, what do you think about him from what you've heard? Well, I said, well, I can't tell you that because all the people I've heard from who talk about Trump have never met him either. And I would never come to a place, but I wasn't trying to be a jerk. I was literally like, this is the way it is. We have all these thoughts from all these people
and who don't know anything really.
It's like, please don't let other people tell you what to think. And I think it's still okay that, Matt, you have one thought and Megan, you have a different thought because your experiences,
right.
Your view of scripture, your relationship with God, the church you attend, all those things speak into it. I am a firm believer that God's intention when he created Earth was not to have Christian communism. And what I mean by that is not to have all of us think and breathe and do exactly the same thing. I mean, look at the beginning. He created Adam and Eve, totally different.
Male, female.
And so that to me says he keeps creating us very unique and very different. So we don't have to line up with everything.
Yeah.
I believe our role here is to journey and to explore and to be in community and discuss. And as we do that, as we open up, as we say things like, I don't know what I believe, it releases the fear that we have to know everything. In an age of information, we can say, I don't know. And that's a beautiful thing to say. I don't know.
Yeah. So we got a response here. General fears. Driving in a car and there appears a police behind you. You will automatically become fearful. It matters not if you did anything wrong or not. This is true. You check your speed. You check and make sure, did I do anything wrong? Yeah, you have a fear about that. That's a great general fear. And specific fears for me as well are ones that you identify, like snake. I am a very risk-taking person. So where many people like Dan would have a problem going into a room full of people he doesn't know, that for me is my beauty space, because one of my top strengths is winning others over. So I can go into nobody is a stranger for me. So I don't have that fear of people like Dan does. My fear would come in, do I have what it takes to present this, to go there, to talk to that person? Do I have the expertise? Where Dan never has that fear because he always knows so much.
But there are a lot of people in the room that have the fear of Suzie. So when she starts heading towards them, they're like, oh, where's Dan? And so I'm sitting in the corner. Come join me quick. Well, we are at 1 hour, 17 minutes. We want to give you permission. If you need to leave, you're free to go.
Some of you are on your lunch hour and you need to go.
We're going to still talk here for a little bit, but we want to thank you for coming and talking about fear. We're not trying to give you any answers here. We're just trying to, as a community, talk about this and look at maybe here are some tools. Here's some things that can help you. Hopefully, we hear this thing from Megan about this operation and we pray for you and we support you.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's what's coming from this group as we do life and hopefully live in the flow together.
Yeah. So fully alive is the revolution that we're in the midst of. And what we mean by that is we are encouraging people to be uniquely the people that God created them to be, fully alive in the way that God created you. Jesus came and said, I have come that you might have life and have it to the full. And it's our goal that we are living so fully alive that we can also show up with Jesus flowing through us as Jesus followers and say, I am here that you might have life and have it to the full. So we're not only having life for ourselves, but we're rolling out that life to others that we're doing life with. And I think that's really the fully alive revolution is a revolution of all individuals just living and finding and relentlessly pursuing their fully alive beings. And as we live in the space and go to the places where we can show up fully alive, that will cause a revolution of safety and life and love and joy and peace and no fear.
Yeah.
Well, only the good kind of fear.
And be really careful when people say things like, well, really be careful because what might someone else think? Well, unless you're a mind reader, you're never going to know what someone else thinks.
You can
You're
ask.
only going to live in fear. That is a fear mongering tool to get you to stop. And we need to be thinking we need to care for people. But if we live our whole life, I think we live in a day where everyone loves to be offended. And so everyone loves to talk about being offended. And we need to be careful not to offend everyone, but don't live in such a way that you don't do anything.
Yeah. Megan said, that would be lovely and beautiful. Thanks, guys. You're welcome. We love being able to be in this space. Matt has a story here. I heard an absolutely great example of this yesterday on a great podcast. Matt's a learner. Love that about you. This cultural moment, Mark Sawyer and John Mark Comer. Mark was in Hawaii and was about to fly out to Portland. In the airport, the building started to shake a little. He thought, I wonder whether there was some big trucks going past or something, or maybe a little earthquake. Anyway, when they arrived in Portland, there's all the news about this massive earthquake in Hawaii. All his friends were messaging him. Only then was his mind kind of panicked and, whoa, I was in an earthquake. That's the digital experience right there. So true.
Well, it's a great one.
I have no idea what that song is, but that does not matter. It traumatized me, causing fear. And Dan, that's something the church historically did well. That's one of the classic ways we err. Another comment says, we so easily fall into the fear of human rather than the fear of God.
So true.
Yeah, the fear of God.
And again, going back to Megan's thought originally, it isn't that we are to be afraid of God. That would be, I believe, as a dad, I would hate for my sons to be afraid of me.
Yeah.
That would be one of the worst things. I think it's the same with God. But there is this honor and respect that that when I receive that from my boys, it brings wholeness. And so I think there is this fear and reverence for the Lord that is the beginning of wisdom that we need to have. But I know of people that are, if I do this thing, I may get zapped by a lightning bolt. You don't know my God. That's not my God.
Yeah.
He blesses. And sometimes the way he blesses doesn't feel like a blessing. It just doesn't. And so I don't think if you're running around afraid of God, you have been told the wrong information. But because fear should bring us to a place of respect, bring us to a place of honor. And I think worship is not something we go to church to do with a song. It's the way we live.
Yeah.
And if we live our life worshiping the Father, it is that reverence that I am going to go plant grass seed today because God likes green. It's just that overflow that I think is that's the beautiful part of our relationship with God.
Yes, well, we have so enjoyed this chat. We're just getting started. Let's continue the chat with each other and with people that we're in our sphere of influence around us. Let us not get stuck in fear. This has been a great day. We have another 2:00 webinar coming on. If you're interested and you want to come on, and it's never the same twice. Well, it just depends on those of you in the chat and those of you who've come on, and we like to make it personal and interactive. And I believe it's been so beautifully today.
Next week, we may continue on fear. We're not going to jump yet into courageous imagination because we paused for a week, but people are still catching up. And so I think we're going to pause for another week. So we may come back next week and talk about fear.
We'll definitely
again,
have Duzie live
or we're going
next
to talk
week.
we'll be in Michigan, so we're going to do it from a remote location. But we want to continue on to build this. We want to give it space because this whole next module dealing with courageous imagination, it is like a springboard from fear. When you move from fear, you're going to have fear or desire. And this whole idea of courage,
being brave,
and imagination, it may take a few weeks. So we're slowing down, trying to get all the stuff out immediately and just sort of breathing with it.
Taking more segments and process that. So if you have a particular angle you'd like us to go next week, we've got some ideas, but we're very open and we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear from you just to see where we're actually going with that. Again, we thank you so much for all of you who have joined us live. For those of you who have jumped on here remotely as well, and you're watching the replay, thank you as well for making time and space for this.
I love your thought from my brother Dale about Abba Daddy. The term Abba only appeared in the New Testament 3 times, never appeared in the Old Testament. First time was with Jesus. The second 2 times was with Paul, but it was this intimacy, which I think that's where we need to lean into. And maybe that's where we just finish this, that we don't lean into fear, afraid, but we lean into a daddy that says, I got you. No matter what it is this week you're going through, hear the Father's words, I got you. My name is Dan.
And my name is Suzie, and together we're a Duzie.
God bless you.
We're loving life.
And we're seeing good days.
And we so encourage you to observe your fear. Don't let it stop you. Don't let that false evidence appearing real stop you in your tracks with a flight or freeze or what was the other one? Fall. Yeah. But if you can take those steps and learn and heal and grow in a safe place at a safe speed with safe people going at the speed you need to go.
And we're just about to end, but Megan just dropped a load on it here. This is a great one.
She says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
Wow.
It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be?
Ah, nice.
Preach it, girl. You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you.
Right.
We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others.
Now here's my encouragement right now.
What?
Take out your phone, get
Snap
close enough
that
where you can
chat.
snap that, and give that a read every day this week.
Megan.
It's a quote from
Marianne Williamson.
Nice. Tell her I said hello.
Oops, I did a video instead of photo. Excuse me. Wow, that's super powerful, Megan. Thank you for sharing that with us. Oh, I see. I missed the whole thing. Okay, sorry. Technical difficulties. There we go. Yeah, so again, thank you so much. Let's keep the chat flowing, and we can't wait to see you same time, same station, different topics slightly. Continue to give your feedback as to what we should talk about next week. I love that, how you're encouraging us. And Marianne is encouraging us, Megan and Marianne, to be brilliant. This is the fully alive revolution that we're talking about. Make it happen in your way, in your places.
I think I already said goodbye.
Yeah, well, we can say, I'm a so longer. That means I have to say bye a lot of times. Bye.
All right.
Bye. Bye.
Fear not.
Bye.